African American Legend series highlights the accomplishments of blacks in areas as varied as aviation, sports, business, literature, and education. We will explore how African Americans have succeeded in areas where they'd been previously excluded because of segregation, racism, and lack of opportunity. I'm your host, Dr. Roscoe C. Brown, Jr., and joining us on today's program is Elaine Edmonds, Executive Director of the Harlem YMCA. The Harlem YMCA is a legend in the African American community. And Elaine, I'd like you to tell us a little about the distinguished history of this organization, the Harlem YMCA.
The Harlem YMCA has been in the community quite some time. The main building was opened in 1919, and the Annex building was opened in 1932. The Jackie Robinson Youth Center now serves youth and traditionally has served over 5,000 youth in the Harlem community. And we have had such notable individuals, as you know, Congressman Rangel, Judge Watson, we've had Langston Hughes, and all kinds of notable people come through that Harlem YMCA.
Well, let's talk about that, because, see, the YMCA throughout the country has been a place where the African American community gathered to celebrate their art, celebrate their history, and to plan some of their political future. The Civil Rights Movement, for example, started in the Butler Street YMCA in Atlanta, Georgia. Not necessarily started, but was one of the key places where they met. Here in New York City, the Harlem Y on West 135th Street was where practically all of the movers and shakers in the black community used to come. They'd come for lunch, they would eat, they'd have meetings, etc. And then during the days of segregation, African Americans could not stay in the hotels downtown. I first came to New York City as a kid in 1934, I believe it was, with my father, Dr. Roscoe C. Brown, Sr., who was in Roosevelt's Black Cabinet at the time, stayed at the Harlem Y. Whenever he and all of the actors and the politicians came to New York from out of town, they would stay at the Harlem Y, because segregation made it difficult, impossible, for African Americans to stay downtown. But then what we find is that the YMCA as an organization was itself segregated. They had the black branches and the white branches. I believe the Harlem Y used to be called the colored YMCA, did it not?
That's right. It used to be called the Colored Man's YMCA. And I think the first YMCA was down on 53rd Street. That was the Colored Man's Y, and it eventually moved from 53rd Street up to 135th Street when a petition was made to branch the YMCA into an organization for colored men only. So the Y does have a history of being a segregated YMCA.
Well, this country has a history of being segregated, and the Y really reflects that.
That's right.
And to put it in perspective, the Y has been one of the leaders in integration over time. For example, the International YMCA College, Springfield College, which is my alma mater, is a place where YMCA directors were trained, physical directors, sports medicine people, and Springfield took African American students long before many of the other New England colleges. So that the Y has been on that cusp. They haven't necessarily been the leader, except that the people who met in the Y, the people who started the men's clubs and the youth clubs and the acting clubs, the American Negro Theater, right in the, started right at the Harlem Y.
Yes, it sure did. And I think Ruby Dee and Ossie Davis were two instrumental, notable individuals who participated in the Actors Theater.
And when Paul Robeson was a student at Columbia, he used to come and act and sing at the Harlem Y.
He sure did. I think we have a tremendous amount of history with many of the notables coming through that YMCA. As a matter of fact, we are planning, Roscoe, a homecoming to find as many of the individuals who are still active today to bring them back in September, so we can just have a fantastic time reminiscing and talking about the old legendaries who participated in the Y. I also understand there was a group of individuals who played basketball at the YMCA.
Oh, the Harlem
These
Y
were the
Big
Harlem
Five.
Y Big Fives. You know, those are individuals who were very instrumental in winning several records around the state of New York in terms
well,
of...
not just the state of New York. The New York Renaissance Championship basketball team that we've talked about, many of those players started at the Harlem Y. And the Harlem Y Big Five really was the place where a number of those players who got onto the Renaissance and won the first professional world's championship in 1939. But again, you're probably a little too young to recognize this, but the world has changed so tremendously. When the black community was, the Harlem community in particular, clear parameters, 110th to 155th, from Lenox over to the river. Clear parameters where the community was organized around institutions, organized around Abyssinian, organized around Concord, Metropolitan, I'm talking about churches now, organized around the YWCA, which only has a small branch in Harlem now, but that used to be the parallel. So when I came to New York with my family as a kid for a vacation, my mother and sister stayed at the YWCA. And my dad stayed at the YMCA. And the YWCA then became the place where some of the Job Corps programs were started. So the Y as an institution means something, and the reason is the building. Now, why is a building-centered program so important in holding social organizations together?
Because it's a legendary and it's the landmark, and I think it comes along with that tradition of the Young Men's Christian Association, what it stands for.
What does it stand for? Because I know you don't have to be Christian to belong to the YMCA, but what does it stand for?
Well, it means Young Men's Christian Association, but it also means that you all come with that Christian faith. Years ago, through this tradition, the YMCA was an instrument in terms of religious beliefs and faith and understanding for all people who came through, and served as a political base as well as a religious base for many transient people that came through the Harlem community. And that's where people really got their really faith and understanding of all the issues that were going on.
Well, I'm sure that some of the folks in the YMCA movement will want me or you to say that it is a non-sectarian organization.
It is.
You don't have to be Christian in order to belong to it.
Right.
That the values that we talk about are the Judeo-Christian values that also permeate the Muslim and other religions. So I think it's very important in 1998 to recognize that the Christian part of the YMCA was when they started, when the kids came or people came from the countryside and go to this mean city, and they would go into a protected building and they would hear about Christian values. But the fact is that those values permeate all religions, and the Y does not have a religious test.
No. The values do permeate all our religions, and it also means that we are carrying forth those values today, okay, from the years back to where we are today in terms of supporting our youngsters. YMCA means the MCA means is just as important today as it was back in the years, but takes on a different meaning in terms of youngsters who respect responsibility, honesty, trustworthiness. We enfold those values to make sure that we are providing that safe haven for those children to come. Parents can feel really, really great about leaving their youngsters there, knowing that they are protected under that whole umbrella of care.
Well, speaking of that, is the Y free? If it isn't free, how does one pay for the membership? What goes on with that?
Okay.
Because in a neighborhood where not everybody has tremendous resources, there's a question of, well, how does one become a member? I know the Boys and Girls Club of America, which I'm a board member, all the kid has to do is to pay $1, and they're in. And they're supported by private donations. But I believe the YMCA does have some kind of charge. But how do you manage that so that low-income youngsters can participate as well?
The YMCA does have some type of charge. We have a membership charge of $30 per child to join the YMCA. And what that does is it's a registration fee for many of the programs that we offer. And we do have scholarships. We scholarship over 90% of our youngsters. And we have a fee-based, which is a tier program for parents in terms of their ability to pay for the programs. So no child is turned away from an opportunity at the YMCA, although we do have fees. Funds are generated through fundraising events, special events. As you know, we just had the Black Achievers event not too long ago, and the purpose of that was to raise funds to offset the cost of youth programs. We're currently working on an annual support campaign. The summertime is here, camp is about to begin, and traditionally we send about 400 youngsters off to camp. And those funds are basically generated through fund development and fundraising events.
Now the Jackie Robinson Center, which is really in the original building of the Y that you talked about earlier, which later became the youth division, has been reopened, it's been refurbished. It's named after Jackie Robinson.
That's right.
Because Jackie Robinson, when he first came to Harlem, he and Roy Campanella used to volunteer and actually work in the Harlem Y Youth Division. And that's why the Youth Division is called the Jackie Robinson Center. Tell us a little about how you got the money to do this and what are some of the things you do there?
Well, we held a capital campaign, and we asked individuals from the community, from corporate America, and from government funding.
And from the city. The city made a major contribution.
Now, the very first contribution was made by the city, which was a substantial contribution
to
get us started. That was our launching pad to get us started. And then we earned $3.3 million to open the doors of the Jackie Robinson Youth Center. This campaign was over a period of 3 years. We started in 1993 and we finished it in 1995. We finished the campaign. In 1996, we opened the doors to the Jackie Robinson Youth Center in October.
I believe the citywide Y organization, the Greater New York Y, also made a major contribution to developing the Jackie Robinson Center.
The Greater YMCA did make a substantial contribution. They get on a match, okay, and that was a 50 cents to the dollar match on it, and that was a tremendous help to the Harlem YMCA.
Because I know they'd been struggling for years to try to make this go, and as you know, I was on the board of the Greater New York Y,
right.
And that was one of my main objectives, to make sure that the Harlem Y got the money to help develop the Jackie Robinson Center. Let us take a few moments to look at a tape that you had prepared for the Black Achievers Dinner that talks a little about the Jackie Robinson Center.
Very good. Thank you.
An average day for preschoolers, they come in the morning, parents bring them in, they go into the gymnasium where they read or they sing songs, and then they go upstairs and engage in various facets of their curriculum. There's science, and there's art, music appreciation, and reading, of course, and math.
We try to make certain that the young people who come to the Jackie Robinson Youth Center do not just come to a center, but they learn about the name of that center, that is Jackie Robinson. It's a special meaning to the people who live in Harlem and people that are in the community.
I like coming here because it's fun and I get to do activities.
I've been coming to the YMCA for 6 or 7 years.
I do karate, swimming, dance, and art.
I do the butterfly, the freestyle, and backstroke.
Here at PS 161, our programs are run out of classroom settings, Monday through Friday from 3 to 6. We have programs that enhance discipline and literacy. We offer activities and homework assistance and tutoring. Right now, the students are involved in phase 2 of the curriculum, homework assistance.
My mentor Janet works in a police department.
I became a mentor because I was interested in giving something back to my community. Marvin Tyler is my mentee. We spend a lot of time together. Most of the time we'll do homework. I feel that he's very bright. He knows his homework. I'm just there to make sure that it's done. And then sometimes he'll open up and he'll begin to talk to me about his day.
I like teaching other kids because my mentor teaches me.
As you can see, you're doing some tremendous things in the Jackie Robinson Center. What are some of the other things that you want to do to expand youth programs?
Well, we are collaborating with several community-based organizations. For instance, PS 175, we run their health and fitness program. Thurgood Marshall, and of course our big venture is our Virtual Y initiative.
Now, just for the public's information, 175 is a school that's right next to the Y.
That's a school next door.
And the Thurgood Marshall Academy is the former PS 136.
That's right, just up the street from us.
That's right. And that shows just how closely you relate to the community.
That's right. My philosophy when I first came to the YMCA as the executive director was to put the Y back into the community. And we think this is one of the ways to do it is to collaborate with many of the community-based organizations and schools who do not have state-of-the-art facilities as we do.
Now, the Virtual Y, which you were beginning to discuss, is an activity that attempts to provide after-school experiences for young people?
Yes, it is. It's a literacy initiative, and it's a partnership between Chancellor Rudolph Crew, Board of Education, United Way, and the YMCA to provide 15 hours of after-school training to youngsters in public schools.
Now, tell us a little about that. I happen to know about the Virtual Y because it started while I was on the board, but I think the public would like to know a little bit more. Like you use the word training. Training is sort of an antiquated situation. You mean educational, recreational, tutoring, and things like that?
It's literacy. It's based on reading. What we're doing is assisting the chancellor in improving reading scores of the youngsters in school by third grade.
Well, how do you do that in the Virtual Y?
The way we do it in the Virtual Y is through literacy training through the arts, through swimming, through...
Swimming? How do you teach reading through swimming?
Well, the way you teach reading through swimming is, you know what, you have to learn the rules and regulations. You have to learn to read them. And we have our youngsters involved in actually sitting down, looking at those rules and regulations, reading them, understanding what they are. There are also various levels to swimming. You must understand if you're a polywog, if you're an advanced swimmer or not so advanced. So we base all of our programs, our activities, whether it's arts, whether it's science, whether it's computer literacy, around reading. We also have a partnership with Time Warner. Time Warner offers a Time to Read program, and we use Time to Read resources to teach our children how to read using current events. And they receive 1 hour of training each day.
You use the word training. Tell me about that. Because
well, training in the sense that with the Virtual Y, we actually sit with the youngsters and they read out loud to us. They identify individuals and characters within a magazine, and they explain who, what, where, when. They do research via our Time to Read by finding and discovering places and looking them up on the map just to identify where they are through association.
Now, you brought with you this presentation, which was developed, I gather, by the children in the Virtual Y. Is that
It was
right?
developed by the children in the Virtual Y at site PS 113. And what it does is it speaks to a lot of the activities that the children are involved in. And it shows shots from literacy programs where they're actually reading in the classroom.
All right, let's see if we can see one of those.
Okay. Because there are various activities
All
that
right,
we
here we
go
are.
through.
There's a lot of activities here.
A lot of activities on that page, and a lot of it speaks to various activities they're engaged in. You know, they do tabletop activities, there are games, reading activities, they write journals. I mean, they do a lot of writing and expression on how they feel about certain subjects. One of the strong points to the Virtual Y is teaching the youngsters how to gain confidence in themselves, to speak about a subject, to read with confidence, to participate in activities with a lot of confidence and skill level, that I can do it mentality. You know, that character building, respect, responsibility.
So who are your instructors?
Our instructors are individuals who are trained by, first they're college grads, okay? Those are the individuals, and the counselors are individuals who have a minimum of 2 years of college training within the field of education. So we do have certified individuals. Many of our trainers are teachers, teachers from the schools that we're actually running the programs in. So we feel that we have the best qualified individuals.
How many young people in this program?
80 youngsters per site, and the Harlem YMCA is currently running 9 sites.
Yeah, so that means you have 720 youngsters.
720 youngsters
And
enrolled.
when
in
you
that
say
program.
9 sites, where are the sites located?
There are 9 public schools, and they're schools within the empowerment zone in Harlem.
And what about the evaluation? What are you finding that's happening? Has the reading level improved? Has the school attendance improved? I know they're feeling better about themselves. I know that must be happening.
The students are definitely feeling better about themselves. Their attendance has improved because they feel that the Virtual Y is a fun place to be. It's fun, and yet they're learning. We are in the process of evaluating the curriculum as we speak to find out just what a difference this program has made in the reading skills of the youngsters. So our stats should be coming out in a couple of weeks.
You mentioned that you're located in the empowerment zone. I believe the empowerment zone has provided some of the funding for the Virtual Y.
That's true. We have funding from the empowerment zone and from Time Warner, and they are sponsoring 19 Virtual Y sites over a period of 2 years for the Harlem YMCA to run.
So that means you have 9, you've got to get 10 more.
That means we have 10 more that we're launching in September, and we are well on our way in identifying those 10 additional sites.
Now, we talked earlier about membership fees to join the Y. Is there a fee to join the Virtual Y?
No, it isn't. The Virtual Y is completely free. It's a free program for all of the students enrolled, and enrollment is through recommendations from the principals and a lottery system. So it's a 50-50 split with that.
Many years ago, the New York City Board of Education used to run programs like the Virtual Y in the schools, paid for by tax monies.
Okay.
As a matter of fact, when I was a young graduate student, I used to work in one of those centers in the Harlem community. And many people my age probably did as well. What happened is because of the budget crisis in 1976, all of those programs were eliminated. And finally, they called upon the private sector, an organization like the Y, to provide programs for young people after school. The only problem I see is that it's only a limited number of kids, and the private sector is only going to support these for so long. To what extent, as you do this, are you beginning to feel or get the feeling from the community that the community really wants us to be a part of the ongoing school day, where Rudy Crew talks about lengthening the school day, about after-school activities. And I know we do have the Beacon schools, which actually operate from 3 to 11 in certain communities, paid for by public monies. So how do you see this evolving? The Virtual Y is a great idea, but on the other hand, it is supplanting what the public sector used to do. How do you see this developing over time?
Well, over time, the Virtual Y, we see the Virtual Y growing in its support of the school system, because there is such a vast need in the schools for youngsters to learn more about literacy and to continue to grow in that particular area. And we don't see the population in the schools diminishing any at all, but we just see there's a tremendous need. And
But if you
the
only
issue
take
about
80 kids out of a school that has 800, how is that meeting the real needs of society?
we feel we're meeting the real needs of society for those youngsters that we are reaching, and we know that there are
That's
other
true.
programs that are supplementing and helping to meet the needs of additional ones. Our biggest challenge is to continue to solicit those funds so that these programs will continue to grow, and that we might continue to expand our programs and to serve more youngsters in the community. We are 19 branches, and all 19 branches are running virtual Y sites. We are running 200 virtual Y sites all total in the school year 1998-1999. So we are looking to grow those programs.
Well, clearly the YMCA and Harlem Y in particular have done a great job with this, but the larger problem is really the challenge to society to provide the public funds to do things like the virtual Y. Public funds could still allow the Y to be participating in it. As we come to the close of the program, what's your proudest accomplishment during the time you've been executive director?
Well, my proudest accomplishments during my time as executive director is to serve 5,000 youngsters at the Harlem YMCA and to see those numbers continue to grow. My goal for 1998 is 7,000 youngsters, and we are well on our way to serving that 7,000, and by year 2000 to reach a goal of 10,000 youth.
I see under the leadership of Elaine Edmonds, the legend in the Harlem community known as the Harlem YMCA is going to continue to grow. We've been talking with Elaine Edmonds, Executive Director of the Harlem YMCA.